This is Zenbleed. It was developed by me and two other guys from my school for our senior capstone project. Now it's surprising that I was able to convince the professor and two other guys that this would be a good idea, but here we are. So this plugin was designed specifically for making Extratone, Speedcore, Hypertone, things like that. And the main reason I made it is because I like to make Extratone with MIDI a lot, and I've never been able to make smooth speed changes with MIDI very easily. I've never been able to find a sequencer that can hit Extratone speeds reliably, but then also change the speed smoothly. So that was kind of the main purpose behind this. So it operates as a MIDI sequencer, but it also operates as a sampler. So you see I have this box checked here for MIDI mode, so it's a MIDI sequencer now. I can also uncheck that to run it in sampler mode, and then load a sample right here to open up a file menu. So to demonstrate more of the features, I'll first talk about some of the speed controls. So some of the main modes, there are three main modes here as far as the speed controls. You have default, which calculates the speed based on the host BPM. So right now I have it set to 140. And then there's the speed slider, which will control what ratio of, or how fast the speed is relative to the host BPM. So if it's set to 1, that's just going to be 140. I can set it higher. That's 12 times the speed. So as you can see, I can control it like an oscillator, where the speed is controlled smoothly. And there's also these 3 speed range buttons here. All this does is it changes what the high speed is. So at low, it's 16x, mid, it's 64, high, it's 256. The only reason I did that is just because that makes it easier to automate it and things like that, because sometimes if you're trying to play around in the low speed range, it's annoying when you have such a high range, because that, at least in this case, if you have automation envelopes, it changes the way that scales physically. But yeah, default mode is pretty simplistic from that standpoint. It's just kind of like a drone, and then the only way to change the speed is from here. Then you have tuned mode, and tuned mode tunes the Extratone to a 12-tone equal temperament scale. So standard tuning, this plugin can probably be extended to handle .scl files to do microtonal stuff, but that's not, I don't know if or when I'll do that. So, you can listen. It's playing the exact tone that you would hear based on this note. So then you don't have to go in and tune it manually. And then of course, you can still pitch bend here. There's some other controls over here as well that you can play around with. There's velocity, which I don't have velocity tied to anything right now, but that controls the velocity of the MIDI note. And that can actually be pretty useful, because if you attach velocity to something other than, it could be volume, but it could be something else, you can get this sort of quantized effect where when you modulate it, it goes in steps, because this is just an integer. I find that pretty interesting. Also, this note control right here in MIDI mode controls which note is being played. So if you listen to this, it changes the pitch of the note that's being sent to the synth. Which, by the way, I'm using Surge as my synth, and it's just Zenbleed here is sending MIDI, because this is lower in the effects chain, because that's how that works in Reaper at least. There's also a length control, which controls basically the length of the note. So like by default, then each note is held until the next one, but you can also make it shorter. And if you play this at really high extratone speeds and you change the length, if you change the length parameter at really high speeds, it can actually creates an almost pulse width. You can't hear it that much right here, but there's some effect on that. So it's kind of like pulse width modulation. Oh, and the other option, since the note slider here controls which note is triggered, you can also turn on key track, which will basically disregard the slider, and the note that's being triggered will be the same one that's being played here. So you can really get lots of different timbres this way, especially if you modulate this. You can do some weird stuff. So then, yeah, the difference here is that there will be a fixed note and then the speed changes versus a key track note and then speed changes as normal. So then the final mode as far as speed control is called ETET, which means extratone equal temperament. And this is a really weird mode. Basically what this does is you pick a root note. So right here I have A1, and let's see where I'm at in this MIDI thing. So the lowest note here is at G1, and then you define a fraction here, so you have numerator and denominator, so 2/1 here. This defines the interval between each note, and this 2/1 is the default, and that's actually pretty useful because this allows you to create basically standard extratone where you double and halve the speed. That's a common technique. So instead of having to go in and chop up all the notes, you basically just play these little, one higher, one lower like this. So if you see here, if I go down, it halves the speed. If I go up, it doubles the speed. And then you can define a different interval, like you could do, 6/4, that's kind of strange. So from that standpoint, you can kind of create a strange microtonal scale with this. But yeah, that allows you to kind of do easy like extratone modulation like that. So then the last main feature of this plugin is that it also has a sampler mode. So if I open up this other track, I have a sample loaded here. You see this dot wave that's loaded. And again, the plugin still functions mostly the same. It's just that it plays an audio sample instead of MIDI. And with this, you can actually achieve much, much higher speeds. Like, I can't remember what the highest I got, but I think it might have been a few 100,000. There's kind of a hard limit because if your speed gets to like half the sample rate, I think, it basically just cuts out. Maybe I'll come up with a way in the future to circumvent that somehow, to make it alias or something, but that's beyond the scope of this video anyway. So right here you can see similar thing, just done with a sample. Yeah, in the sampler mode, you can actually go very high speeds, because as you can see here, it's about 286,000 beats per minute, which corresponds to 4,000 hertz. And the only other difference with sampler mode is that you can actually control the pitch of the sample, and there's no weird pitch shifting algorithms here. It basically just, this will actually make the sample shorter or longer. And one tip here is that if you're trying to go to hypertone speeds, you can turn up the pitch of the sample, which will make the samples effectively closer to each other. Because the thing about this plugin is that if you go too fast, there will not be two different samples that are far away enough to actually hear something. So then you have to make them closer together so you can actually get some kind of oscillation. Don't contradict yourself! And yeah, if you modulate this at high speeds, you get some very weird sounds. And I really like messing with this a lot, and I think that's cool. But yeah, that's about the extent of the features of this plugin. This plugin is free and open source, so you can go download it from GitHub, linked in the description, and even contribute to it if you want to and you're a developer.